Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of The Doctor Suit, where we delve into the fascinating intersection of technology and healthcare. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Dr. Praveen Kumar, the head of clinical sciences at Nference. This remarkable company, affiliated with leading institutions in medicine, such as Mayo Clinic, as well as universities like Duke, Vanderbilt, and Emory, leverages big data to drive forward the frontiers of medicine. Dr. Kumar comes with an impressive background in pharmacology, having completed his postgraduate studies at JIPMER, one of the most premier medical institutes in Asia. Not just a scientist, he's also a self-taught programmer, proficient in 5 programming languages, blending the world of medicine and tech with unmatched skill. At Inference, he leads the efforts to unravel complex clinical data, contributing to groundbreaking research collaborations that span across various technological and health domains. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Kumar. Yeah.
Thanks for inviting.
Yeah. So for the audience, in one sentence, can you please explain what exactly does Inference do?
Hey, thanks, Mohit. Thanks, Sharon, for inviting to the talk. Inference is a science-first company. It's a medtech company headquartered in Boston with offices India as well as Canada. Inference collaborates with top 5 or the top 10 US-based AMCs. What we actually aim to do is utilize this AMC information and make it computable, because these informations are all digitalized, but some of which are easily computable, some of these are non-computable. What we essentially do is create a secure, without affecting patient privacy, neither any hall data security in place. We make it computable and usable for pharmaceutical partners and other research organization to make what is known as meaningful insight out of this. These meaningful
Mhm.
insight can be used for drug discovery, clinical research, as well as for getting patients for clinical trials, checking real world efficacy. Lot of other use cases can be made. This is in short what we do.
That's actually very interesting. It does so much in the data industry, and data is very complicated.
So, Dr. Praveen, you're a self-taught programmer and you have a very strong clinical background. You've done so much in clinical medicine, MBBS, MD, and DM from JIPMER. Can you share your journey from clinical medicine to now data-driven medicine? What got you here? How did you come here?
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Just one small thing. I'm from PGH Chandigarh, by the way. That's completely
Yes.
fine. So basically, what I personally thought was, as a doctor, I'll be able to make an impact on a select number of individuals, select number of patients, changing their patient life. But technology in the today's world of generative AI and leading architectures have a profound impact to have multiple patients who don't even have to know the name, in terms of early diagnosis, detecting advanced diseases early, developing new drugs, and also in terms of like hastening clinical trials. In fact, over the talk, I'll even give you examples of new drug approvals being made using just EHR based information. These are all live already. These are all already there. All these are possible. This is what actually drove me to learn self programming. I don't have a engineering degree or a technical qualification for it. All was done using self-driven orientation with good grace of people around me, and also with the God. Thank you so much.
So basically, from what I understand, the main factor that drove you is as a clinician, you'll be able to impact a select number of patients, but as somebody in data-driven medicine, you can create impact at scale.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That is very interesting.
And I think so technology is the perfect bridge from actually impacting patients' care at scale. So if you have noticed the trends, like Google is moving, like all the engineers are moving to health, and all the doctors are moving to tech. That's the reason.
It's so true. But I think that is actually that's a very good segue into my next question, which is, sir, for the audience, can you explain to me like what are the different types of data, as in like especially unstructured and structured data, and what are the core differences, and where does healthcare fall?
Thanks, Sharon. That's an excellent question. So let me explain what is structured and unstructured data, right? So structured data are actually highly organized and formatted, generally in a form of a relationship database. These are actually present for easy query and getting insight. Say, for example, gender of a patient, age of a patient, or let's say, for example, lab reports. All these are well structured.
Right.
But what is more, even more valuable for some of the important decisions are actually unstructured data. When I say unstructured, it involves physician notes, pathology reports, radiology reports, and also images and even videos. All these are unstructured. These are not well formatted, and in order to derive insights out of it, you have to use state of the art technologies and which are already available, NLPs, to really get informations out of it. So this is one of the places where inference is very much specialized upon. We utilize best in class technologies to get information out of this and convert that into a structured format, so that even those will be well formatted to query for an end user.
Okay.
So the point of taking unstructured data to structured data is so that it makes it easier for the end user to query, like, or is it to train algorithms to give you answers? Like, what is the point of taking unstructured data to structured data here?
Wonderful. Let me give you a practical example. Let's
Yeah.
say, for
Yeah.
example, we want to identify patients with Barrett esophagus. Let's say, for example,
Hmm.
okay, which is like a precancerous condition to adenocarcinoma of the esophagus,
Correct.
right? Now, generally speaking, the columnar metaplasia, which actually occurs in the
Hmm.
gastroesophageal junction, is
Hmm.
Yeah.
generally reported in the pathology reports. What
Correct.
we do is we take this information. I'll be covering a bit more detail. We would have already de-identified it, all the information. On a
Right.
de-identified information, we would actually be running what is known as BERT-based models. This is just one of the things we are doing, but we do a lot, but just one of the more common
Hmm.
examples. So this BERT, what it actually does is it has ability to identify informations out of it. So it are able to identify this technical information that yes, columnar metaplasia is there, where it is there. It is in the esophagus. It will identify. Think
I see.
about this, doing it at scale through entire billions of nodes and making everything into computable. Now, in order to get a patient of Barrett esophagus, I can exactly get a confirmation from the pathology report, which is like the sarcosand. To give a very quick example of one more example to make it even more easy, let's say, for example, detecting lung adenocarcinoma based on a mass
Right.
from a radiology report, similar to that.
Correct.
So all these are unstructured wealth of information buried within the unstructured text. We make it computable and make it accessible so that we'll be able to get relevant patients for the research.
So
Okay.
screening would become like you would solve screening at scale very
Yes,
easily, right?
yes,
That's the bottom line. Amazing.
yes, yes.
So you use generative AI to do this, or how it exactly works? Because I know how AI has progressed is from data science to machine learning to deep learning to generative AI. So because unstructured data is a lot of physician notes. So how do you actually go about it? Is it, I mean, how do you convert that into an objective metric
Exactly.
to,
How do you
to
convert unstructured to
identify
structured?
that risk?
Wonderful. Very, very good question. So, in order to convert, there are there are actually, traditionally speaking, there are three ways to do it, right? So, one is regex based, right? So, regex based means you just write some patterns and you get the pattern. Let's say, for example, you are having the word, let's say, COVID-19, which is actually present. You're getting all the COVID-19 out of the text just by means of a
Hmm.
simple search and all the patterns in which it can be written. But the
Hmm.
thing over here to notice is it is possible that it would have been written the patient was not diagnosed with COVID-19. This also the regex would be
Hmm.
capturing inadvertently. That
Yeah.
is where the second fraction comes known as NLP. NLP takes into consideration not only identifying the disease, which is the entity of interest, it also does what is known as sentiment on that. It will be saying if the
Contextualizing.
COVID-19, yes or no. So we will not only get COVID-19, we will also get yes or a no. You're getting my point?
Interesting.
We can also
Yes.
add additional information
Okay.
like whether he had COVID-19 now or whether he had COVID-19 in the past. This is one.
So
Now,
contextualizing basically.
yes, contextualizing. Now,
Okay.
coming to the third part, which is the generative AI, which you are asking, very, very good question. See, generative AI can be used for it, but it actually involves, it doesn't even need a pre-training. It is just need a very, very little kind of fine tuning. But the thing is, the cost of running NLP versus LLM is what maybe like some of the blocker for us to implement at a large scale. But with Meta, with Llama, and other open source AI currently coming, all these are definitely possible. But as on today, regex and allow or the BERT remain the standard in the industry. Generative AI is something which our company is already leading on the way, and we are adopting and having some internal research on these topics.
Okay, that
Amazing.
makes a lot of sense. So NLP is different too. I mean, NLP is just part of generative AI. It's not exactly a large language model itself.
Yes,
If
it's not a part of, not a large language model.
clarifying that, because I was always like NLP, LLM is LLM. So that's what I always thought.
BERT is a transformer-based architecture. So to be specific, to very, very little, if I can say in one line how it is actually done, it actually does what is known as attention-based development. So first of all, a general model has been developed. While developing the general model, they actually did what is known as two things. Google did this. The original paper is more than 50K cited as on today. That means it's a very, very widely adopted across multiple marketing companies around the world. So what it actually did, it actually takes what is known as masking. It masks words and make the model, the transform model, to understand what is in the left, what is in the right. Before that, it used to only understand in one directional. So bidirectional encoder representation of transformers. It actually understood the words both in the left as well as in the right. So this is the first part, what is masking. Next, what it does is it also does what is known as next sentence prediction. So the model is trained on two important activities. One, some of the words were masked and it was asked to predict what is the masked word. And the sentence is given, it is asked to predict what is the next sentence. So in this particular way, general model has been developed. Now, what we then do is we take this general model and then do a fine tuning. Fine tuning can be for three purposes. I can give three examples. First, for example, the patient was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation and was administered with warfarin. Let's say, for example, in this, you have two important clinical entities in this. One is atrial fibrillation, which is a disease, warfarin, which is a medicine. So this is known as entity extraction. So this is possible by BERT. Remember, we took a general model. We did not do all the general thing. We took it, just fine-tuned it to identify these. This is one. Second is either yes or no. I already gave you an example about sentiment. Let's say the patient is not diagnosed with atrial fibrillation. That also will be identified. Third is, let's say, some classification. Let's say that it's written the drug has let's say the dofetilide was discontinued. Now here, it's a state of discontinuation being made for the drug. Generally, the discontinuation are not available in the structured data. I'm linking to my earlier part of my talk.
Correct.
It's all in the physician notes. So all these three tasks are possible by fine-tuning the general developed BERT model to fine-tune task. That's it. Thank you.
This is the best explanation I've ever had for a large language model in NLP. You remember, Sharon, how we used to always...
I know. Sir, I think, but so while you were talking about this, I had a really interesting question here. What do you think about how do you address biases when it comes to this, right? Because when you're training models on data, right, they will be trained, like the output will be trained based on what you're inputting. And like we talked about before, you just said that, they've been training models for a long time on a lot of, there must be a lot of data sets that they train the models on. How do you go about addressing biases? There has to be, like, there will be implicit biases, right? Especially in all these physician notes that we see. They might be templated, they might be missing something. How do you address those things?
Very good. I think it's a very, very good point. In fact, this is a point which even the regulatory agencies like FDA is actually taking. And in fact, I'll kind of give these information at a later point of time. FDA does what is known as a RCT duplicate to make sure that these methodologies are developed better in RW study. Now, coming to your answer in short, see, there has been many scientific literature and technical advances on how to go about with this in terms of, let's say, copying of notes and also, let's say, physicians implicit thing. But generally speaking, we do as per the standard class, like what is the performance metrics, what is in the, we do what is known as an initial developmental set, and then a test set which is completely done, and then an external validation. We do all this rigorous thing to make sure that we are not fooled, and it actually translates to a new note which comes as a part of a new patient. That's what I think. That's what your concern is. What we have already developed, how it will translate to a new note. We do all this stringent thing to kind of make sure that it works even to a new note by means of having all this technical and scientific things in place.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to ask. Yeah.
Dr. Praveen, I had another very important question to ask. So, from what I see in medicine, we really went from anecdotal medicine that was centuries ago to evidence based medicine that was decades ago to now being data driven. Can you exactly tell how is this influencing patient care? Because we as doctors actually still practice evidence based medicine most of the time. So, what do you see the future and how is it trending right now?
Very good question, Mohit. I'll give you with some practical examples because rather
Mhm.
than saying RWD, RWE, I'll explain these two terms. RWD is real world data, which is the electronic health record or digital information. You use
Mhm.
RWD, apply some methods, and derive what is known as RWE. So
Hmm.
I'll give you some real examples of drugs that have actually got approved in the US, or medical devices or software devices that have got approved in the US driven by real world data. Some of the examples I've got. One of the example is tacrolimus. You'll be surprised. Oh, tacrolimus, it's a FKBP12 inhibitor
Mhm.
cyclophilin, already well known. Why? What is newly approved? Remember, approval doesn't mean new drug. It is also for an indication. It
Yeah.
was originally approved only for liver transplant, pancreatic transplant, kidney transplant, never for lung transplantation. The lung
Correct.
transplantation of the FDA came from real world data. I think it was around 2021. It came
Okay.
just based on real world data. They have given an additional approval of the FDA label where Pangraph or tacrolimus was allowed to be given for this patients as well. This is the first example.
So
Let me
wait,
A lot of money, right, for
no
pharmaceutical
randomized
companies.
control trials.
no
Oh,
No
that saves
randomized control
billions of
trials.
no
dollars.
no no.
Wow.
Okay, so
Wow.
that's the new which is actually coming. Let me give you a second example, which is even more a bit interesting. You would have heard about palbociclib. Again, your eyebrows will rise. Palbociclib, CDK4/6, cyclin CDK4/6, basically a cell cycle inhibitor, already
Yeah.
well approved for female breast cancer. What is the new? Remember, female breast cancer obviously was from the Paloma 3 trial, which is like a state-of-the-art randomized clinical trial. But the additional approval to male breast cancer was based on RWD study. So RWD study led that it can be given for male breast cancer as well, and that led to the FDA giving additional things. Remember, just to add one more point, these are actually coming as a part of legislation. If you would have, in 2016, there was a 21st Century Cures Act, which was actually enacted in the US, and it's a legislation which actually wants to drive new medicines to unmet medical need. As a part of it, big thrust was also given to RWD and RWE, and framework for RWD and RWE studies have been enacted. So it tells how RWD should be there. What are the things to avoid biases? In fact, what Sharon was asking, what are the methodologies to be done? How is to be reported? What are the ways by which patient de-identification needs to be made? How you need to submit to the regulator? All these are covered in that particular thing. FDA is also giving many guideline document, like guideline for EHR, guideline for analysis. So this framework with guideline document with legislation creates entire kind of a
Foundation.
environmental milieu where these kind of drugs got approved. Remember, both of these cases are a bit interesting. Already approved drug was given some off-label in
Additional.
real world, but got a real indication based on those off-label uses.
Correct.
Got my point?
So all the off-label drugs that are being used currently can actually go through this real-world data evidence approach. That's
Exactly, Mohit.
Wow.
point number two. I think so. This actually saves time from drug to market, drug to development. So drug to
Yes.
develop, drug to market. Also fixes the shortages on the drugs that are already existing.
Yes.
Exactly. My question is like all of the off-label uses of drugs that we have, right? How much, like, what I don't understand is if, for example, for lung transplant, you said that tacrolimus is not first line, it was being used off-label, correct? So when, just for the audience, like when can you use a drug like that off-label for something that severe? Because for like, I would almost imagine it would not be legal to prescribe, an off-label immunosuppressant for something as severe as a lung transplant.
Yes, that's a very important question. See, off-label are for multiple reasons. One of the very, very classical off-label, which you would be seeing is pediatric usage of drug. Many of the drugs, many of the indication
Right.
of which has been used for adults, never tested in the pediatric yet given. So if we actually see, then pediatricians will not be having many of the drugs to be given at all. It was all tested in the adult. We simply shifted back to the pediatric based on the dose modification, right? So off-label is actually a physician-derived thing. Of course, about legality and other thing, it's a separate discussion. But it all goes into the context of an ethical usage with the
Yes.
patient benefit in the stake. That is the thing. And secondly speaking, why you'd be also asking, oh, PK, if that is the case, why are we trying to go into an indicated use? Because if it's indicated, much more better. And remember, insurance will generally cover this indicated usage only. So the
I
patient will be benefited.
see.
There is a market over here, both for the wellness of the patient, wellness of the pharma companies, wellness to everyone, because it goes into the insurance.
Reducing
So,
costs eventually.
bottom line is it saves money. That
It
is the
saves
bottom
money.
line.
That's where it's a big.
Yes.
It's saving
Yes.
billions. I read an article maybe a few years ago. A pharmaceutical company spends 5 times the amount on marketing for the drug rather than development. And if they are able to capitalize on either one of these costs, that's it. I think so.
That's
Cost
it.
can be reduced and it can actually revolutionize patient care overall, both in the US and globally. I'm just
Yes.
figuring out how many pharmaceutical companies are actually using this RDT approach.
Yes. In fact, I'll add one more thing. So this is the off-label. People will be asking, oh, is it actually possible to even use for a new drug? I'll give you two examples, real examples. I want to give a real example so that you will have some knowledge. One is a drug known as protimanid. So protimanid is a mycolic acid inhibitor, which is used, it's got approved to use along with bedaquiline and linezolid for extensive drug-resistant TB. Now, if you actually see in this particular thing, the literature or it's actually stated in the FDA as literature review, but it's kind of a real world data only. Real world data actually serves as a natural control. So remember, there are two things. For an already approved drug, you can go convert an off-label into indicated. That's what I already said.
Mm.
So here, what you do is you take real-world data and keep it as a control. Oh, an extensive drug-resistant TB without this treatment will be alive for these many days. Now here comes a new treatment. How many days is it making it alive? If both of this, is it like drastically better or not? One more very, very good example is Zolgensma. So basically, this is actually a SMN gene. SMN, spinal muscular atrophy. This SMN
Mm.
gene is incorporated by adenovirus vector, and SMN gene actually produces SMN protein. So by which the natural history gets better. Now here, what they have seen is they have seen the natural progression of a patient without this drug, and they compared with this drug, and using that natural history based on real world as a control, they were able to get even for new drugs. So here opens an even more bigger thing. You can not only use for an already approved drug as a new indication, even for a new drug, you can use it as a control arm. You can use the RWD as a control arm to get how a natural progression would have occurred and how this disease is making an impact. So thereby it will be even more good actually. That's one additional two examples.
Beautiful.
So basically, just to add a point here, you basically your AI has allowed you to create virtual sandboxes to test out things that would have normally we would need real data and the real drug. Now we can do it virtually, figure out
Yes.
what works, and then implement it. Bottom
Yes,
line.
exactly. See, I would still, as a clinical pharmacologist, I would always say clinical trial has its own kind of that importance
Gold
to make
standard.
sure that. But I see that this digital health and like this EHR based information are going to work hand in hand with them to reduce costs, thereby overall benefiting the patient and humankind. So it's going to be a very, very good thing. Nothing is going to overcome each other. It's going to be a together, and it's going to be a win together actually.
That's actually wonderful. So, Dr. Praveen, you actually gave us a very in-depth insight from a patient care pharmaceutical perspective. And what I've realized is after reading a lot, there's so many low fruits in medicine that exist. How can hospitals really benefit from data-driven decision making exactly? Yeah, so that's the overall question. How hospitals could benefit? Because what I've realized is hospitals generally consider record keeping as database management, and what is exactly happening in the whole globally whole field.
Okay, so that's a very good question. So I think there is one small thing I'll try to clarify. There is a difference between EMR and EHR. So those
Hmm.
two are generally interchangeably used, but not it's not as it actually. So electronic medical record versus electronic health record, which is basically EHR. So EMR is actually generally a single physician and a single center based thing. Let's say, for example, a gentleman known as John, or maybe let's take a gentleman named me itself. Let's say a gentleman known as Praveen visited a cardiologist for his, let's say, chest pain. He got treated, but then he wants to go to a new cardiologist, maybe let's say in Kashmir. The data from here may not be transferred over that. But if it is going to be
Correct.
the EHR system, and if it's going to be the same EHR system which both the physicians are using, EHR actually covers the entire into to all the physicians' treatment. And it actually does, it's a very nice word known as unified patient record. So it does a
Yes.
unified patient record having all the patient related information, where patient also has control on who is seeing, who he doesn't want to see, where he wants to see, who wants to transfer.
Hmm.
And with this particular thing, with the transfer, there is a term known as interoperability, because it's a very
Hmm.
important. Think about this. Let's say a patient is having 10 diseases. Like if during transfer, let's say two diseases got lost, what it's a very huge impact. So it has to be as per protocol. So there are international frameworks like FIRE and other custom frameworks like Search Everywhere of Epic and other things, which actually helps in transferring of these information across
Hmm.
the entire system. So this is the difference between EMR, which is localized physician one center, versus EHR, which is much more comprehensible.
Hmm.
So this itself is a very huge advantage, Mohit, to the patient, that he'll be able to go everywhere, wherever it is, get the care he wants, and all of his record is available with him in a secured way.
That makes sense. So, from a patient perspective, I do understand it becomes a unified health record system, right? But from the hospital operations point of view, how could big data be capitalized upon reducing costs, for instance, improving efficiency, and just overall benefiting patient care as well? So, the whole
Let
workflow itself.
let me give you a very good example. In the today's world of antimicrobial resistance, you
Hmm.
talk about antimicrobial stewardship, right? So
Yeah.
antimicrobial stewardship can be implemented at scale using the EHR and the associated software which can be implemented. Think about this. Like you would have heard about a recommendation known as drug free cycles. Like have
Hmm.
some of the drugs, don't use it
Hmm.
for some time, so that the resistance goes down. So you have the extensive, like the gram negative bacteria, proteus, klebsiella, developing resistance to carbapenem. Within carbapenem, let's say, then you go to colistin, and you know that, oh, colistin is slightly resistance popping up. Stop it. Start another drug. So these kind of data driven decisions can be made. That is one segment. Second
Mhm.
important thing is hospital readmission, by means of understanding which kind of like diseases or resources or units within the hospital are having more amount of readmission. Hospital management can actually have a way to address those, because generally these hospital readmissions are not taken easily by the, like, whoever is regulating, so they'll be able to make an informed decision. And third is like simple hospital day-to-day operations, in terms of what is the period of hospitalization, how many days is it hospitalized, how can we reduce it, because the more the duration it is, obviously we know it increases the risk of more hospital acquired infection, it increases more of this, more of the cost, it also increases more about the resources. The hospital could have treated a new patient at that particular point of time. So all this can be optimized, because every data inch by inch is available in a digitalized manner, and which is then can be processed. Remember, there are two things. One is RWD. Using RWD, you get RWE. You get RWE out of the RWD. RWE is what will be helpful. And RWE can be for effectiveness, can be for safety, can be for daily operations, can be for anything whichever you require.
Beautiful, beautifully phrased. I think so. This is already being done in several hospitals in the United States.
Yes.
If
That
I'm not
exactly. That's what I was gonna. That's exactly what I was gonna say. I think for the last month I've been using Epic here, and Mohit has been. I believe we had this discussion before the call, that I feel like Epic has been doing a lot of these things, and now when you're saying it, like I kind of understand why things like readmission scores, or things like what you just said, having an order set for a particular drug, instead that, for example, if there's a drug, suppose you give azithromycin for 3 days a week, There is an order set in Epic that you can give azithromycin 3 days a week. So that is mitigating physician error also. The physician
Yes.
might say, oh, okay, you're giving it 5 days a week, but if they needed prophylaxis 3 days a week for something like COPD exacerbation, there is an order set that you can put in so that it reduces physician error on our end and it allows and it prevents error on the patient's end also. Right?
Correct.
Yes.
Would you agree,
And
Mohit?
yes.
Yeah, I do agree. And these metrics, all these 50 quality indicators, metrics that are being used, is the gateway to profitability of a hospital itself.
I
Yes.
know. So I think so. You've given us a very great like expert overview on what EHRs are, and that is I till this day thought EMR and EHR was the same thing, right? And I think that alone was amazing. Now, what I would like to understand, as you said about real world data and the RWE, right? So where is India right now? Just to take like an Indian perspective here, India is currently, from what I understand, in the RWD phase. We are still trying to get data online, correct? And then the next step would be to generate insights on it. So I think the companies that are operating globally right now are working on Western data, generating insights and developing models to learn from it. But as soon as Indian data gets online, we will already have all the tools and we will know what to do with the data once it comes. Am I right?
Yes.
Would you
So,
like to expand on? Yeah, please. Sir.
sure. I'll try to explain. See, India has been actually striding on getting, as you rightly pointed out. See, basically the RWE phase of India is not yet started, but more it is about RWD. So basically getting all this digitalized. Ayushman Bharat, you have like one of the big umbrella being the insurance and also the primary center and other things, right? So there is also another digital mission of Ayushman Bharat, known as ABDM, Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. Previously, that was, I think it was NDHM or something, which was National Digital Health Mission, got transformed to Ayushman Bharat Digital Health. It's actually Ayushman Bharat Digital Health. So as a part of it, India is now trying to get all the hospital information digitalized. In addition to that, there are also national NRCHS. Basically, there are national health standards which are actually told on how a EHR system needs to be standardized. As I said to you, transferring 10 diseases as such between the center is so important. So these standards are currently being established. But
Okay.
these are all in more like, I won't say it as completely nascent stage, but not in a stage which the US is currently having. But and also, if you see, let's say e-health, which is being implemented in like big centers, I suppose it's in AIMS. I'm not sure about that, but e-health is there in AIMS. These are more of your patient management and hospital billing, pharmacy kind of thing, rather than a comprehensive in
That's true.
toto information of everything. And also remember one more thing: if a patient who's treating in AIMS is coming from to Chennai, a big hospital, all the data needs to be transferred, right? So those transferring and other things, there are EHR based private players in India as well. Okay, like some of the examples being Practo. I'm not naming anyone. There are many players
Yeah.
out here. I'm just telling a few. Nothing to. I don't have any connections with any of them. But if you see how much Epic has evolved over multiple decades. So
Yeah.
remember, Epic is actually used for what is known as intuitiveness. So you would not even have realized the fastness with which you would have learned that particular thing. That is the
Yeah,
first.
that is
Second,
true.
lot of physician input would have gone into it, that it would have become better and better and
Better and
better.
better. Hmm.
Third, there are many intricate things. Let's say, for example, if it's a diabetes, a patient who is diabetic neuropathy, they'll be doing what is known as, like, let's say this voltage test, which they do it in their palm for neuropathy. They'll be having a vibration test, separate panel for it. So different advancement, they'll be able to have it that, then and that. That is one. Second, Epic also something as known as app market. So it actually allows third people to
Multiple apps. Yeah.
create more and
Right.
more apps around it. So in fact, Epic releases what is Epic Research, where they want one physician and data scientist to pair it as a two
Work
teams,
together.
do some research and release it up hand. So these are all too much advancement. India is developing. In fact, there is one of the law. I actually got the name also. It's known as the DISHA Act. Basically, the Digital Information Securities and Healthcare Act. So basically, the DISHA Act is currently being framed. This actually brings what is known as a National Center for data control and also a health information exchange. All these national bodies are currently in draft. These will be equivalent to what is known as HIPAA, which is basically the Health Information
I
Portability
see.
Act of the US. Remember, HIPAA is actually came into existence in 1997. So
I see.
that's what India is coping up. India is making right strides, but yet we are a bit late. But I think that's how it is, because in India it's more about saving a person's life. Then comes like all this advanced
All of
sophistication.
this other stuff
That's
later.
not true. But also, one fundamental problem I think from India is number one, hyper segmentation, multiple records, paper notes.
Yes.
Some only top hospitals are using EHR. Grassroots level, the data collection is pretty not. I don't know. Maybe things have changed, but from my perspective, what I've witnessed, there's still a lot of development to be made. What innovation could be done in the Indian segment to obtain grassroots level information to hyperscale to put it as a digital health kind of
Get
data.
the solving the RWD question in India.
Yeah,
Wonderful. Very, very good question. See, I think one of the main things, this is what, as I said, Ayushman Bharat digital mission. Basically, this is the main reason why it is part of that particular thing. Digitalize the entire healthcare system of India, especially at a grassroots level, so that things are easily recorded and things are actually easily like, there are multiple layers in it. Once if you have to develop these kind of things, there are two, three things. One is hardware architecture. Second is known as ICT, information communication technology.
Mhm.
ICT networks has to be made. Third is softwares needs to be developed. Fourth is the physicians or like the nurses or the ASHA workers, Angawadi workers, or like healthcare workers, whoever is working at a root level in, let's say, in some village or like district, has to be trained in that particular thing. And then maintaining the quality control. Next, patient privacy and the security issues, all these frameworks has to be developed. I think it's going to be a huge thing. The National Informatics Center and like other organizations are involved in developing these kind of software things, software and hardware competencies, so that the entire information communication technology or the ICT is developed throughout India for transfer of information, recording, and then in turn using for RWE in the future.
multiple stakeholders involved in this.
Yes.
As you rightly mentioned, ASHA workers. Sharon, you remember, right, when we had
I
spoken to
was
you
just
from past,
that is exactly what I was remembering.
they
Go
have done
ahead.
a brilliant job in training ASHA workers. They are actually, they initially they were using AI and ultrasound for fetal scanning. That was when in 2017 I had attended a conference of Path. It was pretty wonderful. They're doing a wonderful job for rural areas.
I think, India's grassroots medical system is actually much stronger than we think, because maybe we don't have doctors in every village, but I think we still, because of the ASHA workers and because of our genuinely, I think the government has done a fantastic job getting people, at least healthcare workers there. If not a physician, but there is a healthcare worker there, right? And leveraging that person who's who's already there, getting them integrated into the RWD solution for the Indian population. I think that is going to be that's going to be one of the biggest healthcare opportunities in India. That's how I look at it.
Perfect. Yeah.
Uh, right.
Perfect public-private partnership.
Exactly. I think we should just pitch this to Path again. Let's do this. All right. So moving on to the one of the concerns of all of this healthcare data, digitizing all this data, is the concern of privacy, right? And while I was working at Nference, for the first time, I was exposed to the idea of accessing insights through an interface system without interacting with raw data,
Hmm.
right? So, can you talk a little bit about that and a little bit about how companies de-identify data?
Okay, great. I'll definitely talk about that. So de-identification of data, especially for widespread usage, it's not something which is an optional. It is mandated, right? So this is as per a federal law, HIPAA, right? So HIPAA is mandating that you can't identify that this patient is this while doing a research or like widespread usage. Other than the physician who is treating, no one else is allowed to add. If that is the case, there are a lot of technology that has been already developed for de-identification. I'll give you some interesting examples so that you have. Okay, first of all, what is de-identification? Let's say a name of a patient. Let's say like a phone number of a patient, web URLs. any IP addresses, any identification number, contact number, credit card number, anything, whichever can actually have what is known as PHA, patient like patient identifiers. Any patient identifier, all need to be de-identified. So when you come to de-identification, there are multiple types. Okay, one of the things is anonymization. You completely remove it off, just put XXX, plus it's done. Another is known as pseudonymization, where pseudonymization, what do you do is, let's say, for example, you are talking about, you are reading a note, it is written, the patient, John, came to the hospital and he was diagnosed with, let's say, asthma. Now, if you remember, if you put in terms of John, if you put XXX, people will stumble while you are doing. That is one. And second is, the problem will come is, when you, let's say, for example, everywhere you have done, let's say in 3 places you fail to change the name, then people will know, oh, this has not been changed because I know all the names has been made into XXX. These 3 names have not been made. In order to overcome this, what this technical people actually do is do what is known as pseudonymization. Instead of John, you put as Michael. So it will be coming that the patient Michael came to the hospital and was diagnosed with asthma. So indirectly, in this way, that 1% or 2% where we fail to change also, people will not be able to know what is real, what is wrong, because ultimately every name has been changed. Got my point? This is known as pseudonymization. This all these are parts of what is known as data masking techniques. Next is known as date perturbation. Date perturbation means you take all the dates of a patient and you add some specific number of days to it uniformly throughout. So by means of perturbing date throughout, what you do is you actually make it, no one can guess it what day he actually came. It will be all moved. But at the same time, remember, when you are actually moving a particular person's date by a particular set of days, it will be throughout his note, throughout the structured and unstructured data, it will be the same value. So that the relative meaning will not be changing, but
I
only
see.
move the patient identifier. Got my point? Let's say, for example, he came to the hospital on, let's say, 31st July. It will be added, let's say, plus 7 days. It will be like coming like 7th of August, but that's it. But we uniformly the same throughout, actually. Got my
That's
point?
that's a wonderful way of
Very
putting
smart.
things together. I think so. It's perfectly compliant towards the privacy rule. But one thing that really fascinated me, I mean, scared me in the past few days. So I've been reading a lot of hospitals or healthcare organizations are moving towards cloud computing in order to save data storage space and data centers and servers cost. But after the CrowdStrike incident, that had a global fallout on all the aspects in every industry possible. And how do you see cybersecurity playing and cloud computing playing in the future of healthcare? Has this scared leaders?
Wonderful. So see, Nference, like we have some of the best engineering teams in the world. All credits to them. I'm a physician, by the way, but we have implemented some of the best methodologies already. I can say what is standard across the industry to handle these kind of things. We do what is known as, is already well known to out there over here, what is known as a data, one of type of data enclaving techniques known as data under the glass. So first and foremost, for all the big hospitals we have working with, none of the, like, we are not having the data. All the data is with the hospitals itself.
I see.
So this is known as a decentralized way of working with all the information. Now what we do is we only get insights out of all of these hospitals. We only get insights. This is what is actually, I heard a word federated from one of you, right? So the federated, when you say this is what we do, we just get insights out of all of this and then use. What are the advantages of this? As you said, low storage cost. We don't have to store only one place. We don't have to store in 2 or multiple places. Second, no bandwidth of transferring. Third, high level of data like data security, because these data enclaves are like secure data warehouse or state of the art, very well developed, both in terms of hardware as well as software isolation, virtualization. These are all like very secure environments where
Military grade. Yeah.
these are the ways by which we actually keep it very secure, actually.
That is definitely from what your company does, how you protect the privacy, right? But let's imagine, I know many hospital chains which have spoken to healthcare leaders in the past. They mentioned that cloud computing saves them cost. CrowdStrike exposed vulnerability in the whole system. So now what is the biggest issue that's going to happen? Will leaders move towards cloud computing, or will they again, you'll see a tremendous growth in hardware devices to store physical data?
It's a very good question, actually. See, this is these kind of incidents do keep popping up, but the scale at which it occurred this time is even more big. But it keeps popping up. It's there is always a plus and minus of everything. So when you have it in a local thing, you are vulnerable to have it like damaged by physical calamity, fire, water, and also intrusions. A lot of things are there. This is a pros and cons of having it local. Another pro being like you can keep it even more secure. It's not in the cloud. One of the big thing is physical calamity, no issues. There will be like more copies being present, and also you have it, there is a balance between all of this. The leaders who are out there, the best leaders out there in terms of technical security, are all thinking about all of this informations and making intelligent decisions, and I would leave it to them on making it. But definitely as an industry, we are not afraid. We have been always proactive, and we'll be continuing to maintain all those things. And also additionally to important to have is each individual who is working in this industry is all well trained in security aspects, that we are not allowed to share, we are not allowed to have any additional usage, a lot of other things. These are all give additional securities for us not to get trapped into any of these things.
All right. So can you tell me something that I've been wondering about this? We've had a very big discussion on data-driven healthcare, and we've also talked about how we are in a state of flux. We are going from evidence-based medicine to data-driven medicine, right? Can you tell us, in your opinion or in your view, can you tell us the three big market gaps and hence business opportunities that you see in the current market where startups can come in and really scale?
I think that's a very, very good thing. See, you will know the answer, the biggest answer out there for you, which is like, I think the today's world of chat GPT and generative AI. Think the involvement of this in a healthcare industry in a secured way without affecting patient privacy, as well as having everything in place. There are some hospitals which are picking up all of this. Let's say you can create a opportunity to create a discharge note, you can create an opportunity to identify patients, many things, like lot of things are there. Okay, let's say like already image based identifications are all already there for a long time, but now with the new generative AI, think about how it can actually, it's like a new brain which has actually come, real brain. We are all amazed on talking with it and having it. So that is one of the things. Another is like as I said to you, Epic has like all these app frameworks. People can develop applications on it, okay, which actually can derive information. That is one of the ways it can be done. And last is digital health. Okay, so I can give you one of the examples. You would have heard about something known as natural cycles. So there's an app, okay, which is used for natural birth control for females. Okay, in fact, you'll be very amazed. Basically, they use the temperature, which is assessed in a digital thermometer that is being inputted, and based on which it will be told that whether you're fertile, non-fertile is actually for natural birth control. You'll be surprised. This is relevant to today's talk because they actually got approval from the FDA based on real data, right? And it was real world data of 15K patients of app was used, and then it was submitted, and then based on which approval was got, it was actually showed to be 93% efficacious. So think about this. People are moving. And one more interesting example is automated defibrillators. It can be used with drones. So this is something people got the data from usage with drones, and then from the real world data, they actually got an approval that it is also one of the ways it can be used. So this is akin to what I said in the initial part, additional indications being this. So think about this. Even an app can get FDA approval and see how it can be like then like more reliable. So they will naturally have that advantage in the market actually.
So real world data is a business opportunity on its own.
Yes.
Right. So medicine and medical applications are not restricted to physicians and hospitals anymore.
Yeah.
That is the bottom line here. Right, Mohit?
Yes, that is the fundamental thing, that because I always thought that okay, if you have to develop a digital product, what digital product you should develop, right? Is this
Yes.
using all the your puzzles which are broken into one piece, one picture itself?
Yeah.
And from what I can get is, according to you, you have worked with US companies, but also you have worked with Indian companies. What do you think we can adopt from the West? And what do you think the West can adopt from us, India as a whole? So
I
there
think
can
it's
be
a
information exchange, you know?
okay. So this is in terms of office operations or in terms of like EHR. Can you clarify a bit
Ye-
about the question?
Yeah.
That will be better.
In terms of EHR and
Okay.
also in terms of operations, both perspectives I would like to have.
Okay, wonderful. So I think in terms of maybe I'll first talk about EHR of the West. As you rightly pointed out, many things are already digitalized. RWD wave has already started like at least like 2 decades back. So a lot of things are already there. Like it's all good. Many trainings have already undertaken. It's all digitalized. Like frameworks are all there. HIPAA Act is there, so that like data privacy and security is taken extremely seriously. You can't mess with patient data. A lot of things are already there. I think India, as I rightly said, Disha Act is coming. There are like this digital health mission is coming, but I see that we need to learn from the best of the above of the West systems and try to adopt it over here. So that's the very very important things. I think the knowledge leaders that already should be already doing this, but I think we should not try to reinvent the wheel from the scratch.
Okay.
Rather, many of these are well established. Many these are all sciences already out there. We should try to take the best out of it and start implementing it in a streamlined manner. Of course, what West can learn from here, the best engineering tech as well as security, everything like Google, Microsoft, everything runs from out of India. So that means India has all the provenance to develop such a system for our own country. So we should adopt that particular thing. Answering
What?
in short your second part of the question about operations, I think it's more of a process driven oriented. It will make it like more good. Like there are ways in which communication has to be made. There are ways in which change control needs to be made. Like say you can't simply go and change without going through a change control board. So all these are more standardized in a west in a these are even used in Indian based companies as well. There are PMP certification, PMI, but having more process driven oriented will be better actually. Yes.
I
Yes,
th-
Sharon.
What do you mean by process driven exactly when it comes to data or EHR as such?
Okay, so the process driven was for operations. You said to talk a
Yes.
little about
Okay.
operations, right? That
Yeah.
was from the operation point of view, not for data actually. That's
Okay.
why I kept it very short so that it
Thanks for
doesn't.
clarifying that aspect. And on a macro level, what implementation challenges you see in India, and on a micro level, like hospitals, what implementation challenges and hurdles you see, even from the administration aspect on a micro level? That means a hospital.
Definitely, I can talk about that. I think one of the things I've highlighted is the ICT. There is information communication technology. There needs to be hardware. There need to be software, and like all these things has to be there. Like software means that the software has to be secure. It has to be maintaining the patient privacy. It should be intuitive. Second, there has been like physicians generally have that kind of that barrier. You would have also been there here, right? So they have a barrier. Oh, I'll quickly write it and finish stuff. But they don't. We need to think is if we document everything digitally, it may be difficult today, but it is going to be
It'll be
wonderful in the
easier.
because retrospective documentation is not at all possible, right? So
Yeah.
that cultural change is one of the big barriers. Third is
Mm.
about the training itself. Training involves multiple things: training of the IT staff, training of the security people, training of the physician, training of all the workers. I think like these are the three big hurdles which I actually see, with addition to the fourth being the full framework being mentioned. Let's say once the acts and other things are all in place, it will then be a law, right? And then in fact like Indian government releasing equivalent to what is known as a 21st century cures act, which I initially said, which is for generating RWE. Similar to
Yeah.
that, Indian government needs to generate all these rules by which people can use and apply right methodologies to get information out of which can then be used by CDSCO, like Central Drug which is like our approval agency, can actually be using it for approval. So I think there's a lot of all this needs to be done,
A lot of process that needs to be done in order to
yes.
achieve that. It'll take at least 2 to 3 decades of work, I feel.
I would be betting a
Um,
bit earlier. Let's see,
Earlier?
already all of this has been started. Has already,
Yeah.
all of this has been started, but I just hope for the best.
I
Fingers
think so.
crossed
COVID
and
was a significant
better.
boost in the digital health mission.
Yes,
COVID played a
yes.
massive role in how digital infrastructure is necessary in India.
yes, yes, yes.
But sir, as a physician who's worked in India, like I feel there is one huge challenge that needs to be somehow solved, right? And that is volume. See, here I can spend 12 hours and it'll take me 12 hours to see 10, 20 patients, right? Because as you said, documentation is a skill that you need to learn and you need to use and you need to, it's a cultural change also. Back home in 12 hours, I need to see 80 patients. Right. So there is no way I'm going to be able to sit and document everything about every patient if I have 80 people to see. Right. And that is the main barrier I see from my own experience. That is the barrier that I see towards digitalization. And do you think there is a solution to that? In your mind, can you think of a way to address that? Do you just make more doctors? Or how do you solve that question?
How
See
do you
what I
break
mean?
the barrier? Yeah, adding to Sharon's question, how do you break the barrier between physician and the computer and the volume of patients so they can talk it?
See
I
what
think
I
that's a
mean?
I think that's a very, very good question. I think there are two ways to break it, right? So two both are very, very important. One is like as I said, tool like which is as high quality as like Epic or like Cerner, Oracle Cerner, which is like all of those are extremely intuitive, right? Very fast as you would be seeing. So developing such a powerful system which can actually help in recording much faster. That is one. Second is I see generative AI having a very, very big bridge. And as you rightly, as you are asking, companies can actually develop the solution of reducing this barrier alone. And generative AI is like today very good. Let's say previously there used to be a voice to text conversion. Think about now voice to text getting routed through a chat GPT. It will understand everything. So it will correct every spellings, everything. So the recordings will become much more better. So all these are opportunities where they can actually do it. And the third being patient volume. So patient volume can be done by digitalization. Like, okay, people can develop like in the like as soon as their phone they install some app, they come into the hospital network, they'll be able to know, oh, this patient has arrived and we know that this is in this particular line. All these are already done, but I think there are opportunities with the current boom of generative AI. I think generative AI can be involved in all of this to make it more streamlined. So let's say people filling questionnaires much more easily. Generally questionnaires takes longer time to fill. They are able to fill questionnaire easily by means of a combination of a good UI with a mix of generative AI. I think all these are going to reduce this friction and time in a big way.
Yeah.
Mohit, do you remember what Dr. Vaibhav said about using the OPD wait times more
Yeah.
efficiently? Can you
Yes.
imagine having somebody with a very well developed software with great UI and an LLM integrated, having one person go and do this process and help the people waiting in line capture all that data so that once the physician actually sees the patient, you have the data organized, ready to go, and the physician does what the physician needs to do. And then all of the documentation is not done just by the physician, but there's an additional either a human being or an LLM taking care of all of the digital stuff. I
I
think that's a company
that's
idea, right? I mean,
yeah. Yeah. So this is a 2 minute brainstorm session, 1 minute. From a practical reality, right? When we explore India, 70% of India, doctors are single practicing physicians in clinics and all. Apart from working in hospitals, they also form a major workforce. Those doctors only sit in one office, they have one nurse. Now, and there are 80 to 100 patients lined outside. How can that nurse and doctor really use technology to actually record all that 100 patients? The only use case I can see is where, while the doctor is speaking and talking to the patient, generative AI makes the note, the template, and that gets recorded. That's it.
Think about like this, right? All of this patient have mobile phones by mobile phones, right?
exactly.
That means like there can be an application, and this is just brainstorming session. There's no
Yes,
right
yes.
or wrong over here. We're just thinking about this, right? So they have something, and there is a secure way by which, as soon as they come in, they are permitted
Security.
to log the information directly into hospital system while waiting in the queue. So what do they do is
Yes.
they all take their phone and take their Bluetooth and keep saying what is the problem. And the current today thing is people are not guided, but now ChatGPT has come in conversation. I don't know if you have
Yes.
talked and seen to it.
Yes.
Brilliant, right? So,
It's very conversational.
so
More than
people.
people sometimes.
Yes, so that's right. So you will be able to develop a specific version of it only for this weight line thing. What is your problem? So that's
Yes.
no more a bot which simply tells whatever it is. It will be more interactive. Oh, it will be
Yes.
empathetic. So the empathetic component is there, right? So people will be understanding. And think about this. Each one of the person are using his phone to log all the information, and let's say people who have logged automatically get a higher waiting time, like will be getting.
Oh,
So
priority.
they'll be incentivized also to log. So they'll be logging in. Once it's all
Oh,
logged, they get incentivized and they will go in. So by the time physician is seeing, all those informations are ready. And one more additional thing is, once they have logged in, it will be logged in English, but it will be conversed back to the patient in their native language, so that to confirm that what you are saying is correct or not. So all this can occur actually.
Mohit,
Bharat
let's
GPT.
let's let's
Built for
let's
Bharat.
start building a pitch deck for this. We'll get Praveen sir on and we'll just start pitching this to people. Like this is awesome.
And again, adding to Mr. Vaibhav's context as well, he had mentioned a similar thing, how patients are in lines. They have so many questions. The generative AI could be used in FAQ section,
Yes.
answering the
Amazing.
most frequently asked questions.
Yes, rightly said.
Amazing. I think, yeah, so I think that is one way I think healthcare is going to change in the next 5, because if we don't build this, somebody will. I know for sure
Yes.
this is going to happen. Um, Other than this, do you, Dr. PK, just to wrap up our conversation, I know it's been a long one. Can you tell us where do you think are the 3 biggest shifts in healthcare in the next 5 years globally? Yeah,
Globally, as I said in the early of the conversation, you heard about 4 selected drugs, out of which even one,
correct.
actually 2 were like tacrolimus for lung transplantation, another is palbociclib for male breast cancer. You will be hearing
More.
more and more approvals from the FDA, and hopefully in the future even with the Indian regulators, just based on RWD data. Think about this,
Mhm.
how much of cost will be saved. And remember, people who are denied will now be getting a new opportunity, and a new,
Mhm.
in the sense, patients who did not have a drug will be getting a new drug. They will be getting a new drug, so it's be beneficial to everyone. Cost will be saved. That means, remember, so majority of the time, pharmaceutical company will incorporate the cost during development while during the market. Since it got developed in a lesser rate, the cost of the medicine also will be less. So it will be completely altruistic, right? So this is going to be the biggest shift. And
Amazing.
second is what is Inference is today leading, right? So basically
Yeah.
generating new hypothesis itself from the EHR information in a more like a federated environment, and doing a decentralized research, generating hypothesis by which completely new ideas can be developed. These can be
Mhm.
used as early as just developing something from preclinical to making optimization during clinical trial to making post approval. So it will be having an impact on all of these levels. I said
Beautiful.
this is going to be the I would say the 2 big change which is going to have. One is approvals, another is new hypothesis. I think this is going to be it's going to be a very challenging and interesting next 5 to 10 years.
Regulatory aspects. That's the game.
Yes.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. PK, for coming to our show. I think
Thank you.
we're out of questions now, and I think we can keep talking for ever. I believe this was so much fun. Anything to add, Mohit, from your end?
Thank you so much, Dr. Praveen. Actually, we really appreciate that you were here, and we gained a lot of insight, very in-depth insight on what is happening around the world. You really broke down the concepts in the most teach me like a five ChatGPT prompt manner.
Eli Fi.
So thank you, Doc Suit. I want to thank you for inviting me, and I've already learned from Sharon and Mohit that the many big leaders have already talked in this particular forum. and I thank for giving me as well an
For
opportunity
sure, sir.
to share my knowledge. I'll be happy to take any questions, any like doubts you have, and I tried my best to give some interesting info. It was a very interesting, engaging conversation with all of you. And
Sure.
thanks so much, Sharon. Thanks, Mohit. All the very best, and all the very best to DocSud. I'm very sure that more and more like knowledge and more. This itself is going to be like a what I kind of like about this entire conversation is you guys are always driving it towards a new idea and a new knowledge
Yes.
and a new market or a new company. I think that is the right tone rather than cherishing on, oh, what is known, what is it, how can we translate it. I think, see, because ideas keep on discussing, it will definitely
Yes.
come to reality. I think that's a very good format you guys are maintaining, and keep it up. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank you,
much.
sir. Thank you.